officially say Shana Tova to you because we are officially entering tonight into our High Holy Day experiences. I know we have some people, not only from the San Diego area, we have some people halfway around the world that are joining us. So welcome, and we're so happy you're with us tonight. I want to let everybody know that our Slichot services, while we're going to be ending this session, I'm going to try to stay very prompt to 8 o'clock. You will have a few minutes to go. If you need to go, perhaps freshen up, go to the bathroom, come back. While there will be something on YouTube starting at 8, the actual service will not begin officially until 8:15. So we knew that a majority of the people that would be coming tonight would be in the share would want to, we want to make sure you had a little time. So, and if we ran over a minute or two, we'd have that flexibility as well. So we have a lot to cover. And the first question I have, and our Torah study learners are very versed in this, and all of our Zoom participants, part of what we're doing over Slichot is really to think about when we say Slicha in Hebrew means forgive, it means excuse me. And it's about forgiveness. So when we say Salach Lanu, and when we pound our chests a little bit, we're saying forgive us. And really tonight is about that penitential entrance into our High Holy Day experience. But tonight I wanted to give you a little more than that. I really wanted to make it about what enables us to transform, both as individuals and as community and society. Where's our potential? And we start with us. And so I have some very special ingredients from our tradition that I think are going to be very useful, but I have a question for you. So and it would be great because I can't see everybody. I'm going to stop the share for a second here so I can maybe see a bigger screen. And you can, under the participant button, I believe when you look at it at the bottom of your screen, you'll see an ability to wave your hand, to raise your hand. So you can do that. So I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you enjoy cooking? So that's my first question. You could just raise your hands, right, if you got it. Okay, you enjoy cooking. Now, if I had to say, how many of you enjoy it in a way where you are pretty exacting in following the ingredients? Like there is no chance that you're going to deviate from this recipe. Anybody on here? I see one hand. Wow. Okay, I see one hand. So when I come over to your house, this is, you're going to promise me you're not going to be exacting? Okay, so this is good. So no, I don't see many hands. So, and how many of you are more like a feel kind of cook? That you get the idea, you get the feel of it, and you kind of roll with it. Okay, I see many more hands that way. So if I had to describe my father-in-law, Doug, who is an engineer, he's a wonderful cook, but he is so exacting. He follows it to the T, as opposed to my wife, Nicole, who is much more of a feel for the kitchen kind of cook, where she just kind of goes with the essence of what she's cooking. So I wanted to bring this to you tonight because there are lots of elements that I believe where we can utilize that can lead us to either exacting this recipe, these ingredients, to bring us to this kind of transformation, this idea, or we use our own flavor to bring the ideas of transformation. And we use our Jewish lens as a guide to help transcend into that moment. So tonight we're going to explore that a little bit. And everything's going to be on screen. So you're not going to be able to see everybody as you are today. I think we have to take you off of your screen. The only ones who are going to be using to share screen are going to be myself and Eileen. We had to turn the share screen on to do it. But if I can ask you to refrain from sharing your screen, we're just going to share our screen. So you don't have to worry about that tonight. I really wanted to show you how we're going to move forward. So does everybody see in front of them right now the sacred ingredients of transformation? Everybody there? I see a blue screen. Okay, can you raise your hand if you see a blue screen just so I can see? Beautiful. Okay, so where I want to take you tonight is to work through this idea of transformation. So what is transformation? So just so you know, I could cover each of these elements. They could each be a course onto themselves. So I'm giving you a little, what we call a ta'am, a taste in Hebrew, And then we're going to use that. Perhaps we can build on it as we go through the year, as we move through our high holy days. But it can give you a taste as we enter into this time together. So transformation, according to our dictionary, is the result of a change in composition or structure and a change in character or condition. So again, something that changes its composition or the structure of it, or it's noting that there is a change in some sort of condition and character. So this is the framework which we're going to go by tonight. And we're going to see this through our text and how it reinforces itself. But first, I'd love for you to join in a blessing. I know some of you already said the blessing at Torah study, so technically, well, we're at sundown, so we get to say it again. So let's all join in together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Amen. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me, right? I know that I think everybody can. Can everybody hear? Turn your volume up. I just want to make sure. Beautiful. Okay, so we're looking good there. So now that we went through our blessing, we're going to start with this concept. And I want to bring it first. I want to ask you a question. Before I go to the pieces here, my question to you is this. For you, can you, and you can unmute yourself if you get if you have a share, can you think of one time in your life where you had the opportunity to transform, where transformation came to you on any level? It could have been on a personal level, communal level. I'm just curious if you think you have something that you have. Cheryl, can you share? Cheryl? Okay, let's see. Go ahead.
This is Janice.
Hi, Janice.
I was going to say, when you become a parent, you transform yourself.
Okay.
And that's beautiful. With me particularly, that was a real transformation.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you, Janice. Anybody else?
When I lost my hair 12 years ago.
Powerful. So
transformation, and I had to accept it.
Beautiful. Anybody else?
I would say. Okay. I would say retirement.
Okay.
Big and beautiful.
Big and beautiful. Okay.
Mine was, I became a teacher. To take care of my mother. I had to, by default, retire and manage her life with dementia. She had dementia. Maybe next.
So these are huge transformative moments. I see other people. Robert, do you want to share? I see a lot of hands. Alec,
sorry.
Go ahead.
I had to unmute myself.
Okay, go ahead, Robert.
Yes, it's the time when I converted to Judaism. That was a big transformation.
Okay.
So, and I have no regrets.
Okay. Beautiful, thank you. Jane. Jane, I think you have to unmute yourself.
I am unmuted.
Oh, there you go. Go ahead. I can hear you now.
Okay, wonderful. I said that I experience myself in transformation every day and actually every moment, because I know that my cells are transforming, that my mind is affecting the transformation of my body, mind, spirit. And so my transformation for me happens very subtly, and also in these big moments that people have shared, like when I went through a major health opportunity for 3 years. But truly, the transformation that is most powerful to me is the one that's happening second to second with my consciousness, my awareness. Yeah.
Powerful. Thank you. I'll do two more. Cheryl Barron. Cheryl, I don't know if I can hear you. Let me go to Roxanne.
Mine, am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Uh, Mine, I think for me, certainly 2 years ago when my husband passed away was a huge transformative moment for me. Not moment, I mean, continuing to evolve from through that loss.
Thank you. Thank you. So all of you named different life, many of you named a lot of life moments. And I think that all of us, certainly today, we're living through a huge life moment of pandemic. We're living through a different kind of way of trying to feel how we transform and be in this space of trying to move through it, and sometimes getting stuck and knowing how to. And but each of the ones that were just described really articulated huge moments where we go through this emotional and perhaps spiritual and often physical shift in our lives. So I want to take you through some of these pieces and these ingredients that I believe will kind of help us through these moments. So the first one is Hineni or Hineni. Now, I want to share this with you because why? Rosh Hashanah is coming up, and in the Akedah and the Binding of Isaac that we'll read on Rosh Hashanah morning, we hear it 3 times actually in the Rosh Hashanah reading. But first, I want to give you some stats on it. The word Hineni actually appears 178 times in the Bible. 178. It appears 8 times in the Torah, in the 5 books. It occurs, 3 of those occur on Rosh Hashanah, and it signifies a turning point, a potential life-changing moment that requires decision, action, and resolution. So Eileen, can you show us the our text, please, our first text? Thank you. So if you look on the screen right there, I'm going to show you 2 different texts because I want you to understand how Hineni is used. Because some of us think that if you're familiar, it's used as Hineni, like here I am. Yes, that's one use of it. But in truth, there's another large use of this text. So I'm going to read the Hebrew just so everybody's there. And if we have a volunteer that could read, this is from the book of Jeremiah. So it's Ki Hineni, if you see it bolded. See there? Korei lechol mishpachot ממלוכות, צפונה נאום אדוני, ובאו ונתנו איש כיסו פתח שערי ירושלים, ועל כל חומותיה סביב ועל כל ערי יהודה. And so what it's basically saying, if someone wants to read, does someone want to read the English? You can just unmute.
For I am summoning all of the peoples of the kingdoms of the north, declares the Lord. They shall come and shall set up each a throne before the gates of Jerusalem, against its walls round about, and against all the towns of Judah.
So in this one, thank you. And in this one, we see that there is a different use of the word Hineni. Most of the time that Hineni is used, it's actually spoken by God or on behalf of God by the prophets. So in most cases, it's generally used in the second way, which means God is declaring something that God is about to do. Hineni, behold, X. Hineni, behold, Y. Something. 3 of the plagues of Egypt are actually presented this way. So we see that the wild animals, the hail and the locusts are all presented with the words Hineni. And it's often in this context of behold, like I mentioned. So Hineni is also used in the way that the prophetic writings are read. So here, for example, the prophecy of Jeremiah was written after the kingdom of Israel was destroyed and the people were sent into exile to the north. And God promises to return the exiles with the introductory words, Hineni or Hineni, for I am summoning all the kingdoms of the earth. And God is drawing attention to God's actions, demanding that we pay attention. So hineni, on one way, is a call. I'm here. And we'll explore that in a second. But in another way, in much of the text that we see, it's actually used as a directive for us to see God, for us to see that God is utilizing, we're trying to see that the actions that God is, that we're supposed to step up and pay attention to. And so I want to delineate between these. Now look at the second one, which is Genesis 22. Now, many of us are familiar with this one. Vayhi achar hadavarim ha'ele v'Elohim nisa et Avraham vayomer elav Avraham vayomer, join me, hineni. So in this one, I'll get someone after to read some more, but in this one we see sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test. He said to him, Abraham, and he answered, hineni. So here we are. Now we're trying to understand and wrestle with this concept of hineni. And this one is a little different, right? This one is God calls out to Abraham and Abraham responds. And Abraham responds, ready for whatever request or demand that God might make. So we all know what it is that God demands of Abraham here, and yet Abraham doesn't change. At the end of the portion, when the angel calls out to him to stop him from sacrificing, Abraham responds in exactly the same way, hineni. Abraham brought his whole being, his whole attention into his relationship. So for better or for worse, Abraham saw his needs and desires as less important than the burden that God placed upon him. That's my reading, by the way. You can disagree, and if we were in Torah study, I'd wrestle with it, but that's not what I'm trying to do tonight. The person, basically, my point here is, the person who can say hineni understands that it means being fully attentive, non-judgmental, and emotionally available, revealing one's whole self to the moment. So here's my question to you. So each one of these that we explore, I'm going to give you a food for thought, because after all, this is a time when we start thinking about others and we start thinking about how we are in relationship to others. So the question that I have here is, so while I have this up, is, can you imagine a time where you experienced the sincere attention and attentiveness of another person? So I'll say that one more time. And we don't need, this is not a feedback. This is a more food for thought kind of question, reflective question. Can you imagine a time where you've experienced the sincere attention and attentiveness of another person? When they put themselves aside to be entirely available to you. How does that make you feel? What kind of response do you elicit from the individual? What kind of emotional response does it offer you? This is an important one, especially that, as we approach these high holy days and we're not going to be physically together, when we're together in prayerful moments, we have this resonance that comes about that through the people that are next to us. And when many of us are not going to have that, we're going to create our own mitash me'at, our own sanctuary in our homes, and we're going to create this experience. This is a really important one to think and reflect on this question. So at times we can detect the nuances that accompany this word, echoes of falsehood or distraction and truth and sincerity. In the Torah reading for Rosh Hashanah, Abraham speaks these words 3 times. He says it to God. God says it to Abraham says it to Isaac, and Abraham says it to the angel 3 times. Those are the 3 mentions in Rosh Hashanah. And each call and each response is so completely different. Each touches a unique aspect of Abraham's emotional and spiritual life, and each responds to a different obligation. One comes out of awe, like awe-inspiring. The other comes out of love. And the third comes out of pain. So we have awe, love, and pain, all within the same Torah portion, all encompassed on the reading, the first Torah reading that opens up our time during the Yomim Noraim, during the High Holy Days. That is incredibly powerful, but it's foundational. Without those rubrics, without the Hineni, we can't even begin to lay down anything in terms of our ingredients, right? So we have a lot to do with it. We have a lot of work that we can do with this, but we have to understand first that Hineni is not just a call to be present. It's also be called to listening, as God calls us to listen to God. And also it can be used in many different emotional frameworks. That's why I asked you to share your own thoughts about transformation. So I want to move on to our next one. And then I'm going to stop halfway for a few questions. Okay, so just write your question down, write it down, take a pen, take a pad, and we'll try to do as much as I can. And if we don't get to your questions tonight, email me, not a problem. Okay, that's no issue. So here is the second, here is the ingredient that I believe is what is going to be the foundation, which is what Yesod is. So Yesod, first we have Hineni, right, that says, okay, we need to be in the presence. We need to acknowledge that it can be in awe, it can be in love, it can be from pain, but I'm here. Now we need the foundation. So here's the foundation, the Yesod. So what is Yesod? We're going to take a look at it in the text. Eileen, can I ask for the text, please? So now, if you look here, this text comes from the book of Proverbs. Kavor sufa ve'en rasha v'tzadik yisod olam. Yisod bolded right there. What does it mean? When the storm passes, the wicked person is gone, but the righteous person is the foundation of the world. Wow, that's pretty powerful. That's from Mishlei, from the book of Proverbs. So in Jewish mysticism, Yesod, and it says right there, does someone want to read this section? I can have volunteer.
In Jewish mysticism, Yesod is one of the Sfirot, emanations of God. Translated literally, Yesod means foundation. Yesod is a foundation sphira, or emanation, as it thought to connect the upper and lower realms, the spiritual and the more earthly. Yesod then can be a grounding force in our lives, but it is not restive. Yesod is often connected to our procreative power as well.
Thank you. So this is a very powerful idea. The idea that we are building from the concepts of Hineni, so we're in the presence, right? Understanding that it can come in different forms. Now we're looking for how do we find relevance? How do we connect it into this process of transformation? Well, first we start with Yesod. So how we do that is really up to us. But I believe that what it says here in the text toward the bottom, Yesod then can be a grounding force in our lives, but it's not restive. So, we think of foundation as I always tell wedding couples, I always say, there are two stories in Genesis. There's Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, and I use the Shibarautam, the connector, to be the foundation of how a couple comes together, right? What are the things that keep them together? And then the Genesis 2 is the helper mate, is the question of like, what are the little things that keep you two supporting one another? And for me, this is much different than that type of foundation, than that Genesis foundation. Yesod is active. It needs to generate. It says to us, it starts us on the journey. We don't stay there. It gives us the power, the balance in order to start building on top of it. That for me is Sphira. That for me is Yesod. It's a very powerful tool. And so I want us just to understand that a little bit, because that is not just a floor, let's just say, or it is not just the foundation of a house that you need in order to keep it up, but it is more than that. It is how you take that grounding force and use it to start building. It's the work that you're doing to build. You're the builder of the foundation. It's not so much that it is just a foundation. So I'm going to go to the next one. I want to hold that for a minute. I'm going to go to the next. I think I have a question with that actually. Let me go to it. Yes. So here is the question. How can that which grounds you lift you up? What are the things in your life that ground you and bring you balance? So for me, I have to always, I know I need a certain amount of physicality in my day. Otherwise, my energy isn't going to be lifted. So for me, the foundation piece is going to be exercise, or the piece that's foundation for me on my daily practice. For others, it might be yoga, it might be meditation, and meditation for me is well mixed in. But it might be other things. It might be prayer. It might be Torah study. It might be getting your cup of coffee. Those are grounding. That for me too is grounding, coffee, very much so. And so that can lift you up. So it can be mundane, but believe it or not, the mundane has the potential to lift us also in other spheres as well. And the second part to that is, how can that which lifts you up also ground you? So how do the things in your life that really, perhaps the relationships you have with family members or friends, your communities, your different chavarot, your affiliations, those things that lift you up, how do they keep you grounded? How do they keep you in a sphere, in a yesod that is going to help you stay within this building block of foundation? I'm going to do one more ingredient before I'll take some questions, okay? So here we go. The next ingredient that I believe is needed for transformation is what we call ometz lev. What is ometz lev? Often, lev means heart, and ometz is courage. So when they're usually paired together, and it suggests that when they're paired together, you can say ometz on its side, it's separate than lev, but when you put them together in this phrase, ometz lev, for me, it suggests that this value is less about acts of courage, but about who we are within and what we believe in. When we fully put our hearts into something, when we can have the courage to persevere and overcome our fears. That to me is ometz lev. So let's look at the text, because the texts are going to be very telling here. If you can, Eileen, thank you. So here's ometz lev. And I see Robert put down watching the sunrise. I like that. So that could be, yes, that can be a yesod, Robert. So look at this one here. From Joshua chapter 1, verse 9, we have, Halo tziviticha chazak, chazak ve'ematz. We heard chazak ve'ematz means strong and resolute, or courage, as we say, right? Ve'ematz. El tarot ve'al tachat kiemcha Adonai Elohecha b'chol asher telech. I charge you, be strong and resolute. Do not be terrified or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So the question that I put to you here is, from this one text right here, is what do you see here? Do you ever look to God as a source of strength or courage? Maybe you do. Why? Maybe you don't. Why? And maybe a further question to that is, how do you find the inner strength to achieve something that you are so passionate about? So when you think of something that you may feel in need of working on, how do you build the strength within yourself to go? Do you look to your support systems? Do you have a network? Do you have a program that works your ability to reflect and inventory and move towards healing and wholeness? Where is that? For me, this is what the prophet Joshua is telling us. The prophetic writing is very clear here. I charge you, be strong and resolute. Do not be terrified or dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. So for a number of you on here, I know already for a number of you that God is not a concept that you relate to or have connection with. And there's zero judgment here. Jewish life can be your cultural identity, it can be your passion, it can be whatever it is to you. For me, the prophetic redactor is really sharing with us the ability to see God and to see a higher power as something that allows us to be chazak ve'ematz, to be strong and resolute. And perhaps that power comes from other family or other support systems or networks that you have. Maybe it comes from your therapist. Maybe it comes from some other element of your life. Maybe it comes from your knowledge, your cognitive ability and skill, your intellect, your wrestling with different concepts. That all can play into chazak ve'ematz. But that is very strong because I believe that you need this in order to lift yourself up. Now, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see right here, this is from Sotah. Now, this is from our Talmudic text or rabbinic text. Does someone want to read this section?
Amarlo, no, oh, you want it in English?
You can just do English, yeah, for time's sake.
Well, somebody else. Oh, Sotah 37a. Rabbi Judah said to Rabbi Meir, this is not what happened. Rather, this tribe said, I will not be the first to go down to the sea. And this one said, I will not be the first to go down to the sea. Then Nachshon ben Aminadav sprang forward and went down first to the sea.
Okay, this is a powerful text. Now, let me explain for those who may not be familiar. We have this rabbinic understanding that when Moses and the Israelites approached the sea, the Dead Sea, the Sea of Reeds, that it was not parted, and that even though God was saying cross the sea, it was not possible because there was an ocean, there was a sea in front of them. It was not parted. They were afraid they were going to die. But there was this one individual, Nachshon, who sprang forward and first, with each step, entered deeper and deeper into the sea. And eventually, our story has it that came up to his head. And after it came up to his head, suddenly the waters parted. Maybe there was low tide that day, I don't know. But in any way that we start to wrestle with it and understand it, that this is a prime example of what chazak ve'ematz is. The ability that you have faith enough to know that you can transcend that potential and know that it looks like it can literally be life or death. But you know that your courage and your strength, your resolute elements of your life will lead you through that moment. So for example, here, the Sotah text is to know, according to the rabbis, this is one version of what happened in the Red Sea. So I just want to be very clear. There are other versions of this narrative, but how is this text in relation to the Joshua text? So does anybody want to make a connection here between the text that we just read, each of the texts? Anybody, you can unmute. Take a look at them one more time. You just have to unmute.
I unmuted.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, who do I see here? I'm trying to look at faces and people and everything. I have so many screens. Go ahead, you can unmute, go ahead.
This is so
If
disgusting.
you have heart and courage, then you don't mind going into the sea because you know God is with you and he'll take care of you. To go with
Beautiful.
the other text.
Beautiful. So that's one connection here, right? So there's this, right here, it doesn't mention God in this text, but we know that there is this idea that if you're strong and resolute, that, and if God's with you, then you can transcend that. So anybody else want to share with that?
Yes,
Go ahead, Burger.
Go ahead.
yes, as I was thinking, the courage and resolute. I mean, fear is the one thing that will hold you back all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You got to have that courage to say, no, I got to do this. It's got to be done, or whatever I have to do. You have to have the courage to do this, because you can't rely on fear to hold you back from possibilities and being the strong and resolute person that you need to be.
Beautiful, beautiful,
Um,
beautiful.
also, it says, Aminadav sprang forward, and you get a sense of the energy and the passion and the lack of, or maybe he does that to overcome being terrified. He knows that God is with him, and that gives him that energy to overcome the dismay or the terror that he might feel.
Excellent. That's great. That's beautiful. And I see also Alec just put down, not sure and believe, let me see that. It was just here, I just said, not sure and believe God would part the sea, even though he did it with potential. He drowned, but believed God would not let him. Yes. So the themes that are running through what you're saying are very important. And I think that, again, remember, I'm being very conscious of, for me, it's a faith element. For me, God is very present in my life today, and there were certainly many times of doubt and questioning and wrestling. And I think it made my God concept even stronger today because of that wrestling and that doubt. But the chazak ve'ematz for me is not necessarily wedded in God. So I want to believe that here, yes, in the text, it says it. It's very clear. Joshua, that's the text. Believe in God, you will move through. Have courage, believe God will be there all the way. I think that there is something greater than that, even in terms of God. For me, the higher power element is very powerful. For others, it may be something else. So I want, that I want to just hold on to. So I'm going to give 2 minutes for questions. I'm going to stop for a second, and I know we have about 20 minutes left. So if you want to, throw your hand up for anything, if you have a question, a thought, I'm curious to hear any thoughts that you have. What a quiet group. I don't believe it. Yes, go ahead, Betty. Go ahead, Miss Lazaro. It's all yours.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I couldn't get it to unmute. So you say that it isn't necessarily God that gives you that kind of strength or courage. It has to be something big. So what? I mean, is it your intellect? You're thinking through a situation and saying, now, if I do this, my chance of succeeding is better than failing, or what?
So for me, the higher power is God. So for me, it is the God concept that's very strong here. I believe that for some other people, they may liken it to their passion, I said intellect is one possibility. I also said that there are others who have certain other ways in which they find their balance in the world, that may be the powerful element or narrative that lifts them through the chazak ve'ematz. It's not always, again, I personally would find it hard not to have God as part of the concept, but I don't believe it's impossible. I don't believe that people are absent of courage and persistence and strength if they don't necessarily have a God concept. I just think that would be, I'm being honest, that would cut a third of our congregation out of the picture. So I want to be very real and honest here. Like that's not what I believe. I believe it's easier when we have a higher power because we're able to really focus intently and we're able to surrender sometimes the the challenges and hand them over to God in a sense. Not giving up, but saying, I'm powerless over this, whatever's in front of me, and I'm going to move forward. I'm going to use Chazak Ve'ematz. Renee, I know you had your hand up.
So you brought up some of the things that I was going to, Rabbi, and in thinking through, sometimes I really want to rely on my heart more than my head. And so it needs me to let go. And so that's where it is. If I'm not fully trusting myself, I know that God trusts me, and therefore it becomes reciprocal. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I think that's a powerful way of looking at it. I know Cindy and Lynn want to say. So Cindy and then Lynn.
I wanted to comment that I think it can also be thought of as like the part of you that turns away from the self-doubt that holds you back. So sometimes that comes from, you know, but I mean, this, even the text says it's with you always, right? So if that, it might be God, you might conceptualize it as God, but it might also be, you know, experienced as something, you know, maybe not so divine, but a piece of yourself that allows you to turn away from those things that would keep you back. You know, the part of you that can feel secure in what you're able to do, or secure in taking that risk. Yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents.
Beautiful. I love that, Cindy. That's it's powerful. And I think it's also what a lot of people struggle with, right? And so we're trying to find, you know, I call it sacred balance, right? So you're trying to find it. And then I believe Chazak Ve'ematz is probably one of the more, you know, I don't say one is more needed than the other, right? Yesod is more important than you know, than Ometz Lev. I think it depends on the individual, it depends on circumstance, it depends on life experience, all of those at play. And remember, this is my recipe, right? That's why I asked you, if you were to write your own recipe, you know, are you exacting? You know, maybe someone wants to follow this. That's great. It may be burnt at the end. I don't know. It may come out that way. But for me, I think it's for me, it works, right? And it's not, and every time, if I'm going through a process where I'm looking at all these elements, I'm not always using every piece. I'm not using every piece as strongly, but I'm remembering that every piece is important, but it may not be that every piece applies in every transformative situation. So I think that was very powerful. Lynn, I know you wanted to share, and Janice will be our last before because I need to bring you to our last 2, which are also very important. And I want so that we can have that time before we close up tonight. Go ahead. Go ahead. I said, Lynn, go ahead. Oh, no, Lynn's not going? Okay. So go ahead, Janice.
Well, I wanted to say you used a very important word a couple of minutes ago, surrender to a higher power. And I think what we're talking about really is the idea of free will. Because, you know, when you are chazak v'amatz, you have the strength and you're resolute, you go forward and you do what you plan to do in some way, and no matter the consequences, and accept it. And it's the same thing with the example of Nachshon, who possibly, you know, said, hey, somebody's got to do this. So I'm going to take the giant step, you know, if we want to put ourselves in his mindset. And I think that's what's going on here. And if we don't have the yesod, if we are not rooted in something, and each of us is rooted in something, we can't move forward in our lives in any way.
Beautiful.
So that's what I wanted to say.
And that's the yesod, Janet, that I'm trying to mention. And I think you articulated it quite beautifully. And that's really important. Remember, yesod yesod is not complacency. That's one I want to very much, I want to dig that into your kishkas, right? Yesod is not complacency. Yesod is about potential, right? You're rising from your yesod, your foundation. So that's very, very important and powerful. Okay, let's look at these 2 other pieces that I have as part of the whole. So this next is, here I'm going to come to our screen again. I'm going to move through the questions. and we're getting to savlanut. Now, in my house, we have to have a lot of savlanut. Savlanut is patience, is patience. And why patience? I want to share this because patience is a very important element of what we call Musar practice. And Musar practice is a Jewish spiritual practice that gives like concrete instructions on how to live meaningful and well-intentioned lives and ethical lives, based in the idea that cultivating inner virtues, by cultivating our inner virtues, we improve ourselves. So that's I just gave you the Peshat, the general understanding of what Musar is. But one of the pieces I want to show you is a section. We won't have time to read the whole section, but I'm going to show you an element of it. Eileen, can you please bring us to the text? So go down to where it's bolded. I did that purposely in case we ran out of time. I wanted to get us to the good sections. Can I get a new reader, somebody else to read this, just starting with according to the power? Cindy, you want to read for us, actually? Would that be okay?
Sure. According to the power of each individual, this is a general principle in spiritual service. Our resources are limited. Any growth we try to do needs to be built on this foundation. We have no choice but to go slowly and not overburden or overextend ourselves. There is a rabbinic principle. One who grabs a lot grabs nothing, but one who grabs a little grabs something. Also, in that little bit that we do try, we may fail often, and despite that, there is no need to despair. Rather, we need to stubbornly begin again until God helps us succeed. We need to be very patient with ourselves. 7 times the righteous man falls and gets up. Even if we fail many times in our practice, in the end, we will succeed with God's help.
Beautiful, thank you. So here we are again. We're talking about the idea of God's help, where God's help comes in, but how does this play into your life? So this is what I want to hold on to. And look at the last line. We need to be very patient with ourselves. 7 times the righteous man falls and gets up. And even if we fail many times in our practice, in the end, we will succeed with God's help. This comes from the Alei Shor, which is Rav Wolbe wrote this compendium on Musar practice. And so these are elements that come out of it. We need to be very patient with ourselves is from the Mishlei, from the book of Proverbs. But I want to show you, I want to ask you these questions. So what is the way that you overburden or overextend yourself? I'm going to repeat that one more time because that's an important one. What is the way that you overburden or overextend yourself? How could you realign this commitment so that it is in keeping with your resources? And resources, I don't mean by material, even though that's an important piece of how we give in the world, right? If there's not parnasa, I always say in kemachin Torah, if there's no flour, there's no substance, we can't do the learning, right? So we need to sustain our institutions, we need to sustain our own lives so that we can continue. But this is much more than that. This means how can we realign this commitment so that it's in keeping with our resources? Meaning, how are we going to where are we going to slow down and take pause and understand that we can't be in 10 places at 10 times, one time, and that we only have this much of resource, but we may think we have this, right? A lot of it comes with that idea that we don't have this space, and we don't slow it down. And so this is about thinking about how we do that. So again, I'm moving through the last 2 here because I really want to get these concepts to you, and don't worry about all the text. I will share with you text down the road if we can. So this one is anava, humility. I believe that Anava is a very important one. So can you pull up the text for us, Eileen, please? Okay. I'm going to read a little bit just for the sake of time. V'ha'ish Moshe anav me'od mikol chadam asher al pnei adama, which means now Moses was a very humble man, more so than any other man on earth. Note, it says anav, but the word after it is me'od. I didn't bold me'od, but it is very humble, not just humble, very humble. And Torah, in my understanding, in my learning, I've never seen an added word that doesn't have purpose. So this idea of anav me'od is very important. Humility is associated, as Rav Kook tells us, with spiritual perfection. When humility affects depression, it is defective. When it is genuine, it inspires joy, courage, and inner dignity. This is a very important concept. And there are more texts that go along with it. But here it's about, our tradition tells us that humility, the Jewish definition of humility, is limiting oneself to an appropriate amount of space while leaving room for others. We call that tzimtzum in our tradition. Do you have an experience that confirms or refutes that definition? Again, this is a reflective question. And I'm going to give you a very easy acronym to remember this concept of anava, humility. Ego. We know what ego is. The acronym, easing God out. Easing God out. Ego is about being so focused on one's grandiosity that we don't have the ability to slow it down. And when we start focusing on the ego, we're not giving any room for the things in life that give us the ability to reflect and be, in a sense, in a place where we can be a little more humble. So hold on to that text, because I believe in that acronym, because that's a very important one. And it's an easy one to remember for the work that we're doing here today. And I want to show you, so that anava, and then in our last 5 minutes that we have together, I'll give you this one question before I go to the last one. When Moses is described in Torah as very humble, as anav, more than any other men who were upon the face of the earth, does that confound or illuminate your understanding of humility as seen in Jewish thought? That there was something about Moses' character throughout, and again, there are some of you that know Moses' travails throughout our Torah and have been studying. Some of you may be new to this. So if we were to do a deep dive analysis of his ego or lack thereof, or his anavness, I say, then we may be able to see that. But what I have seen in the text is that Moses, or Moshe Rabbeinu as we call him, is a character who makes mistakes and then learns and also listens. And so in its most simplistic form, there's a lot of nuance to who he is as a character, but I'm giving you some basics. That to me is about why we understood Moses as an Ameod. The last one, Shlemut, wholeness. Really, really, really important. Not the most important, but important. So here, Maimonides liken the concept. Maimonides is a medieval scholar, a sage in our tradition, and rabbi, and he likened the concept of shlemut to perfection. Perhaps he meant that the full development of a person's virtue results in the achievement of shlemut, and when one achieves shlemut, he or she can truly act b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And so I'll show you one text. Eileen, please. This will be our final text that I'll show you. I think it's a really important one, actually, that we're going to look at. So here in the tabernacle, we have another symbol of unity. From while the tabernacle was made up of many parts, yet it says, so that the tabernacle becomes one. Now, just as a human body possesses many organs, higher and lower, some being internal and not visible, while others are external and visible, and yet they all form one body, so also was it with the tabernacle. All its individual parts were formed in the pattern of that above, and when they were all properly fitted together, the tabernacle was one. Of the commandments of the Torah, the same is true. They are each and all members and limbs in the mystery above, and when they all unite as one whole, they all ascend into one mystery. The mystery of the tabernacle, which thus consists of members and limbs, all ascending into the mystery of heavenly man, is after the pattern of the commandments of the Torah, which are all also in the mystery of man, both male and female, which were united, form one mystery of man. So what does that mean? This text is actually from Chaim Luzzatto, who wrote the seminal work, The Path of the Just. And in this, he notes the following. He says, I've written this work not to teach individuals what they do not know, but to remind them of what they already know and is very evident to them. But to the extent that they are well known and their truths revealed to all, so is forgetfulness in relation to them extremely prevalent. And what he means by that is that it's possible that the reader will find that they have learned little after having read his work. That's what he says. Its benefit is to be derived rather through review and persistent study. So this line that I just read you is about the tabernacle is made up of many parts, but it becomes whole. It's how do we, when we fall apart, when we kind of lose ourselves, and I'm thinking of pandemic right now, when we lose our sense of agency, when we lose our ability to know our patterns and rhythms of life and have them disrupted, how do we bring ourselves back to bring wholeness to the tabernacle? And this is our tabernacle, right? Our personal tabernacle. For me, that's very important. And in Hebrew, wholeness is shlemut, and an individual who's whole is described as shalem, which is the same root, right, as peace. So both of these Hebrew words, they share this. And so when I think about these pieces, and I think about the other elements that I just shared with you this evening, I'm thinking of, we can drop the share screen. I'm thinking of how can each of us in this moment that we're about to get to, this moment within 13 minutes or 14 minutes, we're going to, on our YouTube channel, remember that's where you tune in, are going to start this work that's about reflection. Tonight's about forgiveness, about penitence, but it's more than that. It's how can you start the sacred work of transformation that brings you closer to this wholeness? And how does the wholeness bring you all the way back to Hineni? Remember, I don't think one is above the other, but I think you need doses of these ingredients in order to bring about some transformation. And I'd love if you can think about some of the transformative pieces that you shared with everybody here tonight, the few of you that did, and I know the many of you that have moments that you're thinking of. Think about how many of these ingredients were utilized in that. Maybe they all were, maybe none of them were, maybe a few. I find it hard to believe that none of them were. You may not have known that, but where can you bring this? Where can you find these elements to you for your own wholeness, for your own goodness in terms of your transformative process? I'm very hopeful as we head into 5781 that each of us will find the ways to find new uncoverings between each of these ingredients. And I will make sure these are posted on our website. we'll make sure that the slides and everything are posted. So I know there's been some questions about that. And it's also being recorded. So I know there are lots of questions, I'm sure you have, but right now, I want to say Shana Tova Metuka. I hope you learn a little something tonight, and that we all are digging a little deeper and preparing us as we enter into our time together. And at 8:15, get on a little bit before that if you can. We're going to join in prayer, and we're going to start our High Holy Day experience together. So I'm wishing all of you goodness and wholeness in this time, and looking forward to seeing you on the screens as we go through our Yamim Noraim. Wishing all of you the best. Shana Tova and Shavua Tov.
Shana Tova U'Metukat.
Tova.
Rabbi, wonderful.